Hello, this is the Slothy Llama Podcast, and I am Riva G. This podcast is largely about all things mindfulness and, in general, how to find more enjoyment out of life. I hope you'll enjoy this episode.
All right, so I'm very excited because this is the first live episode with a guest for the Slothy Llama podcast. I'm Riva, as you all know, and this is my guest, Shawn Flynn. And I've been super looking forward to this episode because there's so much that I want to share with you guys about this wonderful individual. And maybe I'll just see if he would be okay with sharing a little bit of an intro about himself and where he's at right now.
Thank you for having me on your show. I'm honored, and I almost don't want to give an intro because what you said right there was so nice that I just kind of want to leave it at that. But for your audience, I'm a mid-market investment banker. I focus on mergers, acquisitions, growth capital. And when I'm not doing that, I have a podcast called the Silicon Valley Podcast where I've gotten to interview some amazing people. And other than that, I do a little bit, spend a little bit of time with Bay Angels and Angel Group here and love traveling, love seeing the world, love, trying and learning a lot of things. But that's a little bit about myself. I can go deeper or more history or however you like. Just let me know.
Definitely. And I'd love to kind of get into all of your path and the very winding path that I've come across that you've had. What I've learned so far in digging into some of your experiences is that you've really had kind of a touch into just about everything. You've been from Costa Rica to China. You've gone through and had experiences where you're teaching salsa dancing. You were helping out at an elderly facility. You were not a gym coach, a personal trainer. You've been with the Bay Angels, you've sold companies, you've bought you've been doing so many different things, and you're in a very successful role now. And my first question to dig into is, what role do you feel like networking had in getting you to where you are today, given like the variety of things that you've touched and found your way into over the course of the last number of years?
Good question. And I'm actually very impressed all the background check on me that you've done. So networking, I would say, I have to almost attribute everything to networking, as weird as that sounds. And I still remember when I was in China. So I lived in China for almost 5 years. And I was talking to one of my language instructors. So I would take a morning language class. And then after that, I would go on and do the rest of my day. And we were talking about guanxi and the power of connections. And you always hear that in China, like, oh, guanxi, your relationships matter and that. And I was talking to my teacher about it. And I was like, what's so important about guanxi? And she responded like, well, if you really think about it, when you have connections, at some point, money means nothing, right? After that, it's just relationships. These people of power, they go into restaurants, they never pay for anything. It's just given to them because of relationships. They want to do something. They're able to do it because of relationships. There's that point where money won't get you anything more, but relationships will. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then the conversation went to a beauty of knowing people is every time you meet someone, it opens up a new path. And you don't know where that path will take you, but that relationship opens it up. And it didn't really dawn on me too much at that moment, but I still remember it. But when I came back to the US in 2013, I remember I was applying. Well, the first year, nothing really much. But when I started applying for work, it was interesting because I would interview for these jobs, and I noticed, who would get these jobs or who would get these interviews, and and it was people's network. It's like this network, this introduction led to this introduction led to that. And through the personal training, that was kind of one of my goals with that. It was to build this network in San Francisco. So I was a personal trainer at the 24 hour, I applied for one gym. It was on Southern Montgomery, which is the heart of the financial district. All my clients were C-level executives, CEOs, CFOs, CTOs of these companies there. And so I was using it to build this network. And then out of nowhere, after you get to know people after a while, it's, hey, Shawn, why don't you work for this company? Why don't you work? I know someone there. And all these doors opened up. And so, yeah, when I came back from China here, I realized I'd been overseas with China, Costa Rica, that in Europe for about 8 years, I didn't have a network. And then I built this network. And the next thing you know, all these doors opened up. And I just realized the value of a network and fostering these relationships. And then since then, I can't even tell you the number of opportunities that have arisen just because I've known somebody in some spot. There's like, hey, Shawn, would you be interested in this? Would you be interested in that? Hey, Shawn, we need a judge to judge an event in South Korea. Do you want to go? Oh, that sounds great. Hey, we need someone to moderate a panel in Guiyang at a big data conference. Do you want to do that? Sure. Hey, Shawn. And it's just, relationships, one thing leads to another, leads to another. And it's kind of crazy when you think about it, but it does make sense.
It really does. And I love, and I just want to highlight for anyone listening, note that he used the word relationships when it comes to networking. So one of the things I try to teach people and really move people to do is be more involved with networking. But it's like they feel like it's sleazy. And I used to have that history where I would be like, oh, I don't feel comfortable with networking. Like it's that you're like, what is it? What's the point? What am I doing? What are they benefiting from? And how am I how am I just bothering people? And the way you use it, but I've since turned around on that entirely. And I try to teach other people to really move towards it and to embrace it as a way of expanding the opportunities in their life and the ways it can help people. And you using the word relationships, I think, would have probably turned me around years and years and years earlier because it sounds so much more authentic. And was it Gongcha?
Oh, Guanxi.
Guanxi. I'm so sorry. Thank you. Guanxi. That's such a lovely concept. And it's across cultures, but the way they treat it sounds like it's even more powerful. And I think it's something that should be more revered because it does lead to these opportunities. And it can be a gift for both parties because the people benefiting on the other side are getting to have you as the judge or to have you be a part of this panel or to run a panel. And then you benefit because you get to meet all of these new people. And there's such a nice equal energy exchange there. And I think if more people, hopefully, who are listening are hearing this and really taking it to heart, maybe they'll feel a little more comfortable with the idea of entering more networking opportunities with that open mind and not feeling as uncomfortable about it.
When they're uncomfortable, is it because they're strangers or are they just uncomfortable because of that term networking? I'm kind of curious.
Both. Some people are one or the other, and then some people are both. I've noticed that some people are just very anxious about interacting with new people. And so there's kind of a different, some of those people I'll work with actually on how their nervous systems handle engaging with new people. And then with the ones who are just hesitant because they're uncomfortable with the term, I try to give them different pictures of what are the opportunities and what are the experiences. And it's not just quote unquote networking. It's so much more than just networking. And the interactions and the outcomes are exponentially larger than the engagement with another person. And you never know what's going to happen. You kind of have to go into it very open-minded. When I went to that networking event with you guys that the Bay Angels had hosted and the Silicon Valley podcast had hosted, I think there were other people who were sponsoring it, but there were, numerous people at the event, and I didn't know what I was going to get into. And I found two amazing guests for the podcast. And that was not my intention walking into the room. I had no intention other than to see what was possible. And now this is possible just from that one, putting myself out there and meeting some really kind-hearted people. But would you mind sharing a couple more examples of how networking really benefited you in terms of your next leaps? I love that example with the personal trainer because that's such a, and you may have gone into it with the mindset of this is a great way for me to meet this level of individual that I want to create a network with. Any other examples like that just to kind of motivate the listeners?
I mean, honestly, I could do countless examples. I just thinking about everything. The investment banking I'm at, that was more or less networking. The podcast, every one of my guests, it more or less is from, I'll use the word relations. So, I mean, really, if you think about my podcast, I've gotten to interview Mike Evans, the founder of Grubhub, Melanie Perkins, founder of Canva, Jim McKelvey, co-founder of Square, Avram Miller, Intel Capital, Steve Schneider. He raised $1 billion. I've gotten to interview all these people, and money's not going to get you in front of these people. It's a relationship. It's someone gave a warm introduction to them and said, "Hey, Avram, do you want," or Avram is how it's actually pronounced, and sorry, "do you want to be on this person's podcast? He's a friend of mine. I know him. He's a good person." Sure, if you trust him, I'll trust him because we have a relationship. And, Mike Evans, founder of Grubhub, person I know, Christina Kumar, absolutely amazing person. "Shawn, do you want to interview Mike? I just interviewed him. I think he'd be good for your show." "Yes, please make the intro." If I didn't have the relationship with her, I would, and she didn't build a relationship with him, I wouldn't get the opportunity to talk with him. And having someone's time, at that level, just to have an hour and a half conversation with them, that's incredible. And just imagine how many people are cold calling or cold emailing or paying people even to try to set up a meeting with this person just for 15 minutes of their time. And yet he blocked out this chunk on his calendar for me. I remember when I interviewed Jim McKelvey, co-founder of Square, it was a Zoom interview and the mics were not working on the Zoom. I was like, what? He's just seeing my mouth move and I'm typing in the chat window. I don't know what the problem is, but, I'll fix it. Hold on. I'm sweating bullets. And he just types in the chat, "I blocked off the hour. Take your time."
Aww.
And I was like, what a cool guy. Like this guy's, worth, was it 2.3 billion or something like that? And he's just like blocked off it, take it. I'm like, restart the computer, log on. Everything's good. Normal conversation. I don't know. There's so much in my life that I can contribute to someone being nice or someone helping me. And then I look back, well, how did I even know that person? Okay, someone else made an intro or connected or someone, and you just see this. And it's really incredible looking back when you put the pieces together. I mean, yes, maybe I studied this or maybe I went there, but there was this person that before that was another person that before that was another person that led this chain of events happening. So I could go into more examples if you'd like, but I think that kind of paints a picture.
I think you're absolutely right. Would you mind zooming in on just a little portion of this? Only because it might sound a little silly, but some people listening might just be a little overwhelmed still with it. They're like, okay, I like the idea. I'm bought in. I want to do the networking and I want to build these relationships. Where do I begin? Because I may not walk into a conversation with one of these lovely people you've mentioned or the room with them or the friend of them. So what would be a step you might recommend to find themselves in conversations with potentially people who could be good resources or good relationships? Let's not call it resources, relationships that they can have to grow and nourish and potentially see something fruitful for one or both parties in the future. Would it be random events? Would it be to find maybe just to maybe go to any networking event and then say hi to people in the room and be friendly? Or is it more to reach out to people one-on-one? Or how did you kind of get started into it? Besides I guess with the personal training, you kind of had it built in, which was brilliant. I love that idea. That strategy was amazing.
I'm pretty strategic with everything I do. And I think through the conversations, you'll get that more. I mean, just for example, the gym, I only applied for 24-hour fitness in Southern Montgomery. I only did that because I knew geographically where that was located. The clients I picked, you can kind of pick and choose your clients. I kind of tailored mine to the C-level, I do things very strategically. I really paint things out. So if people, they might think, oh, everything's by luck. How's that guy so lucky? There's a lot going on in the background. Or building out your network. I would plan it strategically as well. We only have so many hours in the day. And as your network grows, you're going to realize how much more precious your time is when you're getting messages, when you're getting invites, and you have to pick between certain things and then have that balanced life on the side where, you got to keep your wife happy. You got to keep people immediately close to you happy. So I would say strategically plan things out, or maybe it's I'll go to one networking event a week, or maybe I will join this networking group. There's so many amazing groups, Provisors, ACG, BNI, whatever it is. Well, I guess before even that, kind of have that end goal in mind. Is the end goal to move your career forward? Is it to move a hobby forward? Is it to have something outside of work for a balance? Is it a spiritual growth? Like, where do you want to grow? And then grow your network in that area you want to grow in. And then everything kind of aligns. If you want to, be more spiritual, maybe it's grow that network in church or that and grow in that direction. And you'll end up just by that chance spending more time in that area, focusing in more and developing that. If it's in business, okay, what skill sets do I need to learn to get to that next level? Who do I need to know to get to that next level? What are the competitors in the industry that I might jump to and then jump back from that I should get to know? Okay, where do they hang out? What do they do? Let's start networking in that area. Let's start building relationships over there and see how that progresses. And the relationships, if you're building relationships with where you want to go, that's where you'll end up being, right? Because you're going to get information from those people, how they got there. They're going to fast track you there. They're going to recommend you there, especially if they know, like, and trust you. People, I think you get a sense and there's a gut feeling. And I really think higher up, as you move up the chain, people rely more and more on their gut. I really do. And they'll get a feeling of, hey, this person wants to know me as an individual, or this person wants to get something from me, or this person has other motives. If you go into a situation truly just, I want to meet this person and connect with this person, that's when a real relationship's built, and they'll start opening up and they'll start answering questions and they'll start trying to give you more than you give them. Like, what's really crazy, I've noticed in some of the interviews I've done, was the most successful people. Halfway through, I start thinking, man, how can I help this person? And then I'll catch myself and go, wait a second, this person's a billionaire. This person has all the resources in the world. And I'm sitting here thinking, because of how nice this person is to me, I want to help them. Like, what resources do I really have that I could sit there and be like, hey, if you ever want 2 for 1 at Starbucks, I got a coupon for you. But I've noticed, there's a lot of people like that where you just meet that. And I think, some of the most successful people, they present their way, they build genuine, authentic relationships, and then the people around them want to help them, want to support them, want to bring them up. And when you're out there networking, building your relationships, for the people listening, if that's kind of the mindset of how can I build these others, there's going to be reciprocity where they're going to like, okay, how can I build you up? And it's just this win-win ecosystem where, yeah, there's, have you ever heard of the book, The Giver, where you have givers, equalers, or takers?
I have not. I think I'm thinking of The Giving Tree, which was a very different book.
I love The Giving Tree, but at the same time, it's like book. The worst thing ever. Like, that tree gave everything to that one selfish person. Even at the end of it, the person's like, I'm just going to sit on you now. And you're like, how could that tree go through all that pain? But it's basically like in life, there's the people that, you give them $1, they want to give you 2. You help them, they want to help you more, or they're 1 for 1. And then there's others, you give them 1, they give you nothing. You give them 2, they give you nothing. They just take. And, I've noticed in life, like, yes, equalers, great. Givers, fantastic. Takers, avoid. And when you're building relationships, you want to give, and the other person's a giver. They give, then you give, then they give, and then it's just this mound you're climbing up of giving and helping. And that doesn't have to be, I give you $5, you give me $5. No, it could be, here's an introduction. Let me make 2 introductions for you. Hey, let's sit down for coffee, brainstorm ideas. Hey, I got some ideas. It's just this keep building more and giving more, and everyone wins. It also comes from a mindset of abundance, I think, too, where you're okay making intros from the relationships you've built to other people, and they're okay making intros from the relationships they've built. Versus if it's this limited mindset of only one of us can win, well, then nothing really gets, you don't grow. Nothing gets accomplished. Kind of forget what the question was.
I have as well, but I love all of the answer I've gotten so far. And there's so many things I picked up on from what you shared that I'd love to jump into as well. And one thing with the networking, just to maybe tie a little bow on it, would be, so, and again, I think everything that's been shared so far is really helpful for a different lens on networking, because it's really about how can you guys give more for each other. And I think I also want to highlight that I think with you, there's much more strategic nature behind where you're giving. So it's not just to places that are sucking energy and kind of leaving you with nothing. And it's not to say you have to go into something expecting something, but you do have some kind of mind process. So it's not just like blindly giving everywhere where you're exhausted and then left with no energy, no resources. Like, it's 2 individuals who are of value in general of themselves just because they're a respectable person, and therefore you're having a return from that experience.
Maybe more information for your audience. Maybe this is too much for that, but I could kind of tell you the strategy of when I go into like a conference or an event. Do you, Michelle, can you hand me the business card over there in the book? Yeah. So when I go into an event, it depends on the event. Like, maybe I'm going to an event just to hang out and a hobby or something like that. But if it's for business, I'll go into an event, I'll take, collect business cards, and I'll look at the person's face. And each corner of the business card has what my follow-up's going to be. I bend the right corner, I'm following up in 24 hours.
Oh my God, I love this.
Upper left corner, I just put the person's information in my CRM. I put him in my LinkedIn. That's it. Bottom left corner, I might just put it on my counter. Bottom right corner, I throw it away when I get home.
Oh my God, that's amazing. I wish I knew this for so many events that I've gone to.
So,
what did you do with mine? No, I'm just kidding. You don't have to tell me what you did with mine. That's okay.
But, I went to CES the other week. I have this pile of companies follow up. This one's to enter follow up in 6 months. This one's, and then toss. And so that clears everything out, so I know where to focus for work. Now, they're in the CRM. Yes, all these I'm contacting immediately. These, like I said, 6 months, and it's just there. Okay, email them, connect on LinkedIn. For my strategy for the podcast, when I have a new guest, okay, normally a warm introduction. Then from that introduction, hey, let's set up a time for a Zoom call. Have a 30-minute Zoom call. From the Zoom call, hey, I'm going to send you a question set. Can you give me feedback? Okay, email them a question set. They respond back. Everything's fine. Email them right before. Hey, just making sure that this date, times, everything's okay, and there were no changes. Great. We do the interview. Then follow up. Okay, your episode's live. Here's all the links. Let's share. Here's my calendar link. Let's schedule a catch-up call in the next month. Follow up a month later. 7 touch points right there. 8 touch points. So it goes from a person who was a warm intro that I never really knew to now most of my past guests, if I email, they respond pretty quickly. And once again, these are the guests that everyone else is cold call and email, and they can't get a moment of their time. And now I'm just like, hey, let's grab coffee one of these days coming up when you're in the Bay Area. Yeah, I'll be there in a month. That'd be great. So the podcast, very strategic how to go about building those relationships. The conference is very strategic. It's really kind of planned out to how do I build this personal relationship where I'm not actually asking for any, like the interviews in that, in some sense, you're given more than you're taking, but you're building this relationship. And then later, when people know, like, and trust you, it's how can I help you? You know?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, go into the conference. So that the business card trick, that's one for your listeners. Some of the other things I always write little notes on the business cards.
That's smart. That's so smart because there's so many people. If there's something important, you don't want to forget that one. And you're like, oh God, which one was it?
And you can do a lot of things where they're time touch points as well. So say I'm at an event and I'm like, Riva, let's take a selfie together. Well, I've emailed you, put you in, but 2 weeks from now, I'll send you that picture. Not immediately, but 2 weeks from now. And then it's, oh my gosh, we have 20 connections on LinkedIn together. When am I going to see one of these people? Well, I'll see them at the event. Hey, do you know I just took this one picture with Riva? Or you can, hey, do you want? I'll send it to you. Hey, and then take a picture of that person, send it to Riva. Oh yeah, you'd be surprised my LinkedIn how many selfie photos there are, which is just people going, hey, you know so and so, like, you know Brian.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe at the end of this interview, I'll take a picture of you, send it to him, and be like, hey, Ryan, look who I just talked to. He'll respond, oh my God, no way. And it's always there. So the next few conversations I have with Brian, it'll just pop up right there. Or you know, just these little touch points of a reminder, just stay top of mind.
And it's so quick and efficient. And because I always wonder with you, like, you're doing so many things all the time. Like, how do you manage it all and handle personal life on top of that? And because obviously you have a very loving wife and she's wonderful and that's important to you. And you don't want to neglect that aspect of life. And so, you know, but this is making sense now. You have things in place and strategies and tactics that are, but what I love is you're not just a strategic person. Like, you're not in it just to win the game or something. And that's one of the things I really appreciated about you from really day one is I could tell you're a very authentic, empathic person. You're very thoughtful. You're very careful at reading people. And I've even heard you share on other podcasts and YouTube videos and things about your experiences in other countries and being able to read the room and maybe you're also doing it for the purpose of work and knowing, you know, when's the appropriate time and who's the appropriate person to speak with. But I really think you apply this into so much more than just work. And maybe you might use it as like the strategy, but realistically, there are other people in the world who don't use it so personally and in a way that's meaningful and uplifting and encouraging for all of the individuals as much as you do.
I think some of it, though, is I think one, for a while when I was overseas, it was definitely more of a survival thing than anything else. Because I was also always trying to check out who's about to screw me over.
A good reason.
And, you know, there's a lot of instances overseas where, you know, being the foreigner that doesn't understand language, people were trying to take advantage of me left and right. But I also want to say I got really good at it because I did end up with my wife, Michelle. So I got, you know, and when we, for the first about 2 years, we didn't speak, we spoke Chinese only. And my Chinese was not that good at the time. So I had to win it over through gestures and, I don't know, subtle smiles or whatever. But what I've learned more than almost anything, one, everyone has something that they can contribute. Like, everyone. There was a person I was talking to the other day that was interested in joining Bay Angels, and we're like, this person just doesn't make sense, but he's just such a nice person. And then I had a longer conversation. We talked for about an hour, and then out of nowhere, his career doesn't line up. Him himself, just a really nice guy. But then you hear things that aren't in his LinkedIn, like his background, and you're like, oh my gosh, your network is literally insane. And you could add so much value to these entrepreneurs that you will meet. yes, you're a perfect fit. And I think some people, they just kind of push others off too quickly instead of really diving in. I think everyone has something to give in some area, some aspect. And I know how horrible this sounds after I just showed you the business card trick for me to say this. But for me, I'm not so much really at that level looking at the individual. I'm more looking at the company that they're with and that kind of judging those. So there's a lot more to it. So my apologies for all the listeners out there. Don't think I'm this insensitive guy. Go back to those few positive things that were said earlier and just focus on that. But what I'm trying to say is when you build a relationship with someone, that relationship, you start figuring out like little pockets of like little gold here, little insights there, and every relationship can add value. But then going back to if the person's a taker or that, maybe that value is not worth everything else that comes with it. But I don't know. Maybe I'm just going in circles with this answer.
You're doing amazing. And honestly, I wouldn't expect you to at some level do this for the purpose of business and work. You are an investment banker by day. And so if you weren't good at your job, if you didn't do it for your job, you would probably not be good at your job. So considering you're successful there, I think everyone expects you to have, a level of it's not all personal. There's some business in there.
I have had the reputation of being the one investment banker you don't grab your wallet and try to hide when he's around. So.
Well, that's true. I wouldn't worry about that at all. I think you have far more than you. I don't think I have anything that's not exciting, to be honest. But I would trust you with my wallet.
Thank you.
For what that's worth. I would actually love to hear the story of how you guys met, though. I mean, we can keep going on the other stuff, but since we touched on the meeting of your wife, and I heard hand gestures and eye movements and gazing, and that sounded, I really want to know what that looked like. How'd you win her over?
Well, first off, my charming personality and for everyone listening and only not seeing the video, my stunning good looks. And for everyone that's watching the video, my voice. Oh gosh, I don't know. But
hey, you won her over.
I won her.
There's a package there that she liked.
I mean, Stockholm Syndrome, you only have to invest so many years for someone to eventually break. For us, actually her roommate introduced us.
Oh, really?
So I was at studying Chinese. I was at Beijing Yandashe, and there was a gym there, and the person behind the counter was Michelle's roommate. She wanted to learn English. I obviously wanted to learn Chinese, and we set up a language exchange. Aww. And of course, she couldn't come alone because foreigners are all evil and will only try to take advantage of young Chinese girls. So she brought her roommate with her for protection. Now, once again, everyone at home, my wife, the moment you see her, you don't want to mess with her. Like, she's at least 108 pounds.
She's very beautiful.
Yeah. We're talking 5'2" tops with heels on. So very intimidating. Very, very intimidating. So I knew my place instantly in this meeting of, yes, let's focus on the language exchange. And then months went by, and then I was just at the mall and I see this person walk by me. I was like, oh my gosh, this person looks familiar. And she turned around and I was like, do I know you? And she's like, what? And we started talking, and then we started hanging out more and more and more. And then months later, we started dating after about 6 months of playing badminton. And for everyone,
actual badminton, or is that a metaphor?
No, like actual.
Okay.
Like I for the record, I hate badminton. But for some reason, in China, girls, like, people just love badminton. And I was like, we should hang out. No, well, do you want to play badminton? Okay.
That's the key. It's just
so
wow.
I literally for months was persistently playing badminton with her. And then finally we started dating. What are the odds? We've never played badminton since. And I refused.
How did she feel about that?
Sometimes you got to be selfish and it's about your feelings. Badminton is not, yeah. So yeah, don't have to play badminton anymore. Got the girl, no badminton. And for about, the first 2 years there, we were texting everything in Chinese, everything. So you could imagine how bad my Chinese was. And somehow still she would hang out with me and somehow she'd still laugh at some of my jokes. And I think it's just because whatever I was saying was probably so ridiculous. She's probably like, is this guy genius or is he just, held his breath for too long coming out of the womb? Like, but, yeah, persistence, I guess, won that one.
Definitely sounds like it, but no more badminton.
Yeah, no more badminton. No. And I'll tell everyone, people are like, yeah, I totally, worked so hard to get my girlfriend, blah, blah. We had to go on 4 dates where I took her to a nice restaurant. I'm like, I played badminton 6 months.
You win.
Like, if you don't think that's like putting in effort.
That is dedication there.
Exactly.
Serious dedication. Did you ever accidentally insult her?
Many times.
Okay.
Oh my God. So I don't know, Michelle, how many stories can I share? like I still remember this one time. So in China, like yellow flowers means you're breaking up with someone. Like you just want to be friends.
Okay.
So I don't know this. I go to the flower shop. Shawn's like, super romantic Shawn is going to buy his girlfriend flowers. And I'm sitting there. There's like dead roses, brand new yellow flowers, like brand new. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to get Michelle these brand new flowers. And the lady behind the counter is like, like, 你给你的女朋友这个? Like, 对. She's like, I was like, yeah, 多少钱? Like, how much is it? Like, I want to buy it. She's like, okay, sells it to me, come home, have some yellow flowers, have this like teddy bear, all this. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to give them to Michelle. She's going to be so happy. She says I never, ever do anything romantic for her. Michelle comes in, sees the flowers, starts crying. And I'm like,
oh no.
I'm like, you don't like your gift? And she just keeps crying. I'm like, well, I could get you more flowers, more tears. So
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
You couldn't have known.
I
don't think anyone would know.
I had no. I thought I was the most romantic guy in the world. Turns out she cried for like 2 days.
Oh God. But the teddy bear didn't like even it out. No.
Well, the teddy bear was like, how do you even see a teddy bear with eyes full of tears? And that was just one of many instances. Most of these things came around not understanding the culture, and that like I really like the Oakland A's. They're my team. Can't wear a green hat in China. Can't do that. Look it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Good.
No yellow flowers and no green hats.
No green hats.
Okay. And
that was embarrassing. So, but you learn the culture over time. And once again, you size the room. I thinking back to it, I should have understood. So I was walking from the flower shop and I remember people staring at me. And I was just thinking, well, I guess they don't see foreigners buying flowers, because where I lived, I tried to always live in like only Chinese area, like no foreigners. Like my roommate was Chinese. In fact, I told him, I was like, yeah, I speak Spanish. I'm not from America. I'm from Costa Rica, because I was there to learn Chinese.
Sure. I
went to the Chinese gym. My friends were like, I tried to isolate myself from the foreigners because I really wanted to fully immerse myself. And I still remember people were staring at me while I was carrying the yellow flowers, but I never at that time put together, they're staring at me too much. But then after I saw the reaction, I went, damn it.
That was appropriate amount of staring.
I should have caught on a little bit more.
I mean, I get it. I don't think anybody has the awareness that flowers mean different color flowers mean different things, but that is a painful lesson to learn when it's your future wife.
Yeah.
But but I'm glad I'm starting to understand why the many subtle reasons that you value cultural cues so much. I've heard you talk about it in other contexts with like the glasses, and you don't raise the glass. You taught me something. I was like, I didn't know that in that culture you don't want to raise the glass the highest, but now I know.
So for all the listeners,
much more important, significant other ways that the cultural differences can be impactful.
I mean, the raising the glass one. So everyone listening. In China, whoever has the highest glass is like the king of the table, right? So you put your glass a little bit lower than the other person to show respect. And then ideally you do this a couple times and someone puts their hand under the glasses to show everyone's the same size. So are all equal. But I was at this one dinner. I probably have said this story on a separate interview. There was a French guy there. His Chinese was perfect. Like, just perfect. And this is a problem with learning the language without learning the culture. If you know the language, people are going to expect you to know the culture. If you don't know the language, they're okay with you not knowing the culture. He knew the language, but didn't know the culture. So we were at this dinner, this business dinner. He's speaking Chinese. Everyone's impressed. And then he raises his glass higher than everyone else's to basically, in their minds, to show everyone he's the best one here. Now, if he didn't know the language and he did this, they'd go, oh, this guy doesn't know. Because he knew the language, they're like, he just insulted all of us.
Oh, man.
And so, yeah, cultural cues are huge.
That's a valuable lesson and just something to be aware of. If you go to China or any other country, you're going to have to learn the cues of that culture.
Yeah.
Or you will learn the hard way. I guess there isn't always like a little like handy notebook that's just like they sell to foreigners where it's like, beware of these things. Don't.
I mean, you could find stuff like that online, and there's so many good like.
But you can't find everything. You're going to screw something up.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you have to live there. You have to live there for a good amount of time, too.
And that's why you did it, right? Like, that's the whole point of you staying there. You
almost 5
with a
years
year before you got used to it, and then it was 4 more. Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, for everyone listening, after college, I was in Costa Rica almost 2 years. Then I went to China. I was there almost 5 years. But in that time, I went to Europe for about 6 months and then back to China. So overall, it was about 8 years overseas after college, where I was in countries where I didn't speak the language and had to learn the language when I was there, and the culture and everything else. So, and honestly, just that, I mean, you get to use stuff like that your whole life, and it really changes everything you do the rest of your life. And I see myself just listening and that in more conversations now. And I know if I hadn't had that experiences, I would never be able to be as perceptive or just to sit and listen or I don't know. Yeah, I'm not really sure where I was going with that one, but basically I'm just saying if you get the opportunity to move abroad, do it.
It sounds like a really, really rewarding experience that you had there.
Mm.
And, it's funny because I was thinking about this with when I had heard you talk about being in Costa Rica and then going to China and having that whole year where you really were kind of isolated because you couldn't talk to anybody. Self-created isolation. But it almost is a level of a mindfulness practice, just the essence of being in isolation for that length of time. And you're left alone with you and your thoughts. Well, I mean, your squirrely thoughts trying to figure out what the heck everyone's doing and what they're saying, but also you are literally left alone with your thoughts. And that's something that people fear greatly in our culture because of the constant monkey mind that a lot of people experience. And I'm curious how that was for you and how you felt through the experience, and if there was any kind of a hurdle in the beginning, or if you're just like good with your own brain all the time.
I think I'm pretty good with my own brain, but I'm very determined. When I want to do something, I go for it 110%. And so when I moved to China, my goal was I'm learning this language, I'm learning this culture, no matter what. And, I did literally tell everyone when I was there, oh, lo siento, solo hablar español, soy de Costa Rica, just so people wouldn't speak to me in English. And I isolated myself quite a bit. And I'd meet some of the foreigners that, would have all the Chinese girlfriends and stuff like that because they would teach them English. And I'm like, no, I'm here to learn Chinese. I'm doing this. And yeah, you're isolated quite a bit, but you're having such an adventure at the same time. I mean, just looking at a menu and ordering something there and going, what's this character? Okay, I have to write this into my dictionary here and write it out. And, okay, I ordered yesterday and I said this and it worked. Today I'm going to say the same, and it's actually quite exhausting too, where, halfway through the day, you're like, God, my brain, I've used it all up. Like it's nap time. And I think a lot of it is just being that goal oriented person and going, okay, and seeing the rewards, like visualizing, if I can do this, what are the rewards that will come from it? And in my mind, I was thinking, if I learn this language, this culture, my career, I'm going to have so many business opportunities in the future. I could always see big possible outcomes because of maybe temporary suffering, if that makes sense. Like maybe I'm uncomfortable and giving up some things now, but long term, I have all these bigger opportunities, these bigger adventures that other people won't have. And just seeing that, I was always able to focus on that versus maybe the current uncomfortableness.
That's really interesting. And what you're saying, it's starting to piece together into my brain. So you were actually an expert at being mindful, or my definition of mindful is just being present in the moment to experience the life that you're experiencing. But you've literally created scenarios for yourself where you had to be present in every moment for your own well-being, safety, knowledge, food needs, and like functioning. And that's actually really incredible. And that makes sense why you'd be exhausted, because your brain was literally present and taking in everything like a sponge. Whereas a lot of people are on autopilot, and that makes sense in the culture here, because if you're used to everything, of course, it's easy to be overwhelmed with your thoughts when you're just sitting there or in a restaurant because you know everything around you. But if you didn't, you would be forced in like your situation, which is like, that's just so cool. I'm sorry, I'm more geeking out on my brain of thinking like, damn, that's a good way to practice mindfulness. That's like the true living meditation right there, whether you realize it or not at the time. I'm sure that wasn't your goal, but you accomplished that for a very long time.
And one of my favorite things to do, and I still, want to do it now, is when I was in Costa Rica, I would just take my little dictionary with a few sentences for the day, and then I would just go hiking in the hills for the whole day. And then when I'd come back, I'd practice those sentences with the people at the park.
Oh, nice.
And it was just like, that was the day. And I'd visualize myself, okay, this is how I'm going to approach the person. This is how I'm going to say the sentence. And then if they react,
Do you have your own like manifestation of like, this is how I'm going to manifest my afternoon? It's going to be just like this. It's going to work out. I'm going to say this and they'll understand.
They'll understand. And if they respond, I'm going to remember that. And then I'm going to figure out what those words are later. And then the next day I'll be able to say that and a rebuttal to that one. And then.
That's so cool. That's amazing. That's way better than Babbel. Thank God they're not a sponsor.
Someone's about to pick up the phone. Oh, we had all this money to throw at them. I mean, I guess they could edit out that one thing, but I don't know. I've already heard it once. So, hey, Lastima.
No, that's really impressive. And yeah, you truly are a dedicated to accomplishing things kind of person, and that's gotten you very far in life. And I can't imagine how anyone would do all. I mean, you've done so, like with all of the things, it's like you're a successful investment banker. You have all of these other projects, and just so people listening can know, he has a Silicon Valley podcast, but he's also had a TV show, which was the Silicon Valley Successes. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And there was another podcast, I think, in the middle there. No?
Well, maybe. Are you talking about Silicon Valley on the Investor Podcast Network? Or are you talking about Silicon Valley Tech, which was a 10-episode one that was it?
I'm not. Maybe that one. I think I'm thinking of that one. And so as you can see, there's even another like something in there that was besides that podcast and the Silicon Valley podcast.
There's a lot of these trials. Like, okay, we'll try this for 10. And then if it works out, you continue. Or if it doesn't, that's okay, because that's the trial.
Strategy.
So I did me and a person wanted to do a podcast with me. I said, okay, we'll do a 10 episode trial. And then at the end of the 10 episodes, it was, you know what? Neither of us has the time or commitment for this. That's good. Shake hands, part ways. Perfect. It's still up. You can still check it out. The episodes are good quality, but we both decided not to continue. I have a lot of these little trial things with a lot of different projects, and that, I mean, for the companies I started in China, I'll admit to 3, right? I'll admit that the first 2 failed and the third one succeeded. I will admit to that. I won't admit to the dozen others.
Wow. Okay.
That
I love hearing this. This is awesome.
that literally were like, I'm shaking my head looking back going, God, there's no business plan for that.
See, I've never heard these stories, but these are some of my favorites. Because it's reality. Like, I love you being so. Thank you for being vulnerable there. Because like you can tell, like, that's not like things aren't perfect the first time, and then it's like, oh, look, this. Yeah, the TV show. It's like probably other things. What led to the TV show? I mean, I could understand the iterations of the podcasts, but
the TV show.
Yeah, how did that happen? I mean, okay, not in a way. I understand you're a very intelligent person who obviously has a lot of great connections, but so I don't mean to say how could it happen for you. But
No. But
why did anybody want you for it? No. How did that come together?
So this was strategic as well.
Of course, I'm gonna have to like borrow your mind for future days because you're just I love the strategy that you have behind all of this.
So the TV show, just for everyone listening, is called Silicon Valley Successes. I did 46 episodes. It's on
YouTube. You can find it to this day.
It's on YouTube. It ended up in 28 cities in the U.S. on public access station, including LA 36, which is the largest public access station in the U.S. So it caught on, and that's what led to the podcast being formed through a relationship with the Investors Podcast Network that then led, it just, one thing led to another, led to another, led to another. The TV show, the origin of that was I was helping companies from U.S. set up operations in China, and Chinese companies set up operations in the U.S. So I was doing these road shows back and forth. And when companies set up in a new city, they need the same things, right? How do we incorporate? Hey, we now, how do we find an office? Okay, how do we customize our pitch deck to local investors? How do we do, tax for it, the list goes on and on. It's this company comes here, they need to set up the same thing. How do we hire employees? Can we, how do we fire people? How do we do everything? And so I was having the same conversation. Let me introduce you to this lawyer. Let me introduce you to this accountant. Let me introduce you. And then I just thought, wait a second. Why don't I just interview all these people I'm making these intros to? And then when I'm working with these companies, I say, watch episode 3, 7, 12, and that will answer 90% of your questions. And then if you want these intros, let me know, or I will connect you to these people, but to save their time, watch these episodes first. And so it was strategic in the way that I wanted to be as efficient as possible with my time and offset and, basically outsource a lot of my work to this existing library of information. Why should you join the Mountain View Chamber of Commerce? Watch this episode where I interviewed, and that's going to give your business the connections in Mountain View. And it's got, the questions I asked the person are the questions that would happen in that meeting. The first meeting between the company and whatever organization, whether it's, this speech coach, this pitch deck, this accountant, this CPA, this, lawyer, patent lawyer. And so I created, like I said, 46 interviews to use as a reference library for these companies, because I figured that'd be a better use of my time than having the same meetings over and over and over again.
That's brilliant. And but how did it get turned into a TV show? So I know how it makes sense. Like you made the library beautifully, and that's a great resource. But then how did that get converted to a show?
Oh, the whole thing was a TV show from the beginning. So it was KMV T15 is the public access station in Mountain View. And so I was leadership Mountain View. There's like 30 companies in Mountain View that have representatives, and those companies or representatives come together once a month to kind of talk about how can we work together with the city. So there'll be someone from Google, someone from Microsoft, and I was representing the company that I was with at that time in this group. And out of nowhere, they're like, blah, 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 our public access station. I was like, wait, there's a public access station here? Oh my gosh, hold on. I went to it. I was like, how do I get a TV show here? They're like, well, you need to take these courses, get these certifications, get a crew. Immediately, I got everything done in weeks. And then actually go into relationships. I'll tell you a story after that. But, they're like, yeah, you normally have to wait like a year or two to get a show. I'm like, no, we're going to start this Monday. And I was just that person that was relentless. Like, I'm going to recruit this crew. I'm going to get these people. And then we started it. And took it from there.
Wow. Okay. That's pretty incredible. And I appreciate hearing the backstory because I always wondered about that one. I was like, huh. But so you really just made it, you powered through and you made it happen. You were like, what do I need to do? And then you did the things that you needed to do.
Yeah. Who do I need to talk to?
You didn't fall into it by luck. You didn't just trip and then the magical fairy brought you a TV show.
Nah.
It's helpful for people to hear this though, because it's like, there really is a lot of thought that goes into these things and these opportunities that you can create for yourself, but it requires asking and trying and failing. Not the TV show, but like other things where it was like, maybe several podcasts were like, no, or companies were like, eh.
Yeah. I mean, there's a huge list of failures for every success. But the best part is the successes are the ones you talk about, and the failure is you just keep them for podcast episodes later and talk about those.
And I have several more questions, but I do want to be mindful of time. And as I become a better host in the future, I will maybe not actually turn off my phone and I will keep track of time.
It's okay. We got about 10 minutes if that's okay.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
8 minutes.
8 minutes. Okay, perfect. We can do it. Okay. So a couple more questions just to dig in a little bit more into some of the stuff you do outside of your work. I'm wondering, when you do an event or you have like the Bay Angels and the Silicon Valley podcast are putting together this networking thing and this pitch night, just like, how do you go about getting your sponsors and so one of the things I try to actually inspire people to do and work with them on is creating their own passion projects and creating side things that are like, inspiring, fulfilling, that bring I feel like you can't just do some people can do 9 to 5, but I think there's so much more value when you add on to the 9 to 5 with things that are really meaningful to you, or maybe they feel like they kind of flow into your 9 to 5. But one of the struggles that people face are like, well, how do I go about creating an event or creating a movement? And one of the easiest steps is just like, how do you create a successful event? Meaning, where do you get your sponsorship from? I know your podcast isn't necessarily like, you don't necessarily take sponsors for that, but I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but for like major pitch nights or other events, like you have other contributors, you have sponsors, like how does that fall into place? Because I don't imagine you go around blindly asking people, because that would be less efficient.
Oh, no. I mean, yeah, go back to the whole strategic thing. So
for as much as you're feeling like sharing.
No, I'm just trying to think of what would be the best for your audience. And I think the biggest shortcut that your audience can take, I've done this a little bit. Take over what someone else has built and they don't want anymore.
Okay.
So what do I mean by that is there's countless meetup groups right now. There's countless organizations. Just go and meet up. These people have built up these meetups of 1, 2, 3, 5,000 people or whatever on it. They haven't held an event in 6 months.
Okay.
Go to them. Hey, your event is aligned with what I want to do. Can we partner? And can I work with you to host an event? All I'm asking is, we put this in your meetup group. I'll manage everything. Great. Now you have a huge follow-in for your event. You've done everything that you're just piggybacking on their hard work over the years, but they no longer want to do anything more.
Cool.
Or just, hey, all these groups want help. Why don't you just volunteer for 1 or 2 events, and then out of nowhere just say, can I run the next event? And then the next event, you tailor it to what you want to do. But this group is already positioned to what you want to do because you're in that group. And now you're seen as the president of that group. You're seen as the leader of that group. You're the one that people are coming to over time as you're rising up the ranks and whoever is there. I mean, there's people in Silicon Valley that their full-time thing is just take over meetup groups and then bring them together. And they'll run, 50 meetup groups and then start selling sponsorships. Well, when you have that volume of access to people, companies come to you because you have something they want. Right?
Yeah.
So why not just look at these groups that you might already be a part of and just say, hey, I want to take a leadership role. And you'll kind of find that you put in a little bit more time, but you get a 10x return on that time, especially if it's done correctly, where there's people in place and you can delegate and stuff like that. But there's so many, just like businesses, where someone may have been at it for 30 years, but they're like, it's just time to hand over the reins. There's so many groups, clubs, and that people are like, I've done this for 2 years already. I'm kind of burnt out, or I want to spend my time doing something else. Can you come in and do some of it? And you look at them and go, oh, sure. You've already spent all this time. And I just have to do a little bit more effort and I get all these rewards. So why not do that? I mean, the event that you attended, right? That came through. It started off as I interviewed a person for a podcast. The person at the venue was like, "Hey, we want to host events here." I said, "Okay." I was on another podcast and the guy's like, "I want to host events." Like, "Hey, I got a venue. Do you want to help organize?" Brian at Bay Angels was like, "Hey, we got to do an event." I was like, "Okay, so we got Bay Angels now, we got Boris now, we got a venue now. Okay. Let's see who else we get." Just random conversations, and then you just put everyone together. They all had their own pieces, and then you're having conversations. How would it benefit them? Just tell them how it benefits you. We're going to bring in 100 people to your venue. Great. 100 people in this venue are going to be potential clients for you. Great. 100, and just tailor it and have the conversation differently for whoever you're talking to, tailor it to what they want. And now you have this amazing event organization where everyone's winning.
Oh my God, that is amazing. You really are strategic. And so you guys didn't have to pay for like the venue, like that just fell into.
Well, let's yeah. But
like the things like that can happen where it's like everything, all of the pieces actually come together and it's an orchestration more than a like digging and carving and like fitting and fighting.
No, you're not fighting. You're creating a win-win-win-win all around the board.
So much more.
Yeah. I mean,
this is amazing.
Yeah, and I mean,
not just for the listeners. I mean, I'm taking advantage of learning from this now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at the place we're at right now, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you've never heard of this place before.
Ever.
It's
beautiful. I mean, it's right next to the ocean, and
we have access to it whenever we want. We just bring in guests here, but now the guest, the VIP, knows the location, so it's the location's win. Right. Mm-hmm. So they win because they want more people to know this facility. There's spaces upstairs, offices to rent, and the people we bring in here are VIPs. We win because we have access to it. It's beautiful. It is. If you paint the picture how everyone benefits, everyone wins.
Can you start like a school? No, you started like 10 already. You're good. Your work is done. Although I'm sure you'll continue forward with so much more. Just because it's just who you are.
Thank you.
So thank you so much. This has been super valuable for me, for everyone who's been listening. I already know it. I don't even I know I'll hear good feedback from everyone and everyone's grateful already. I just had a couple final questions and then we can maybe close this out. So one is, do you have any particular practices of self-care, well-being, taking care of yourself, helping to manage this like work-life balance of yours in a way that's, happy wife, happy life, plus, the work gets done?
Yeah, quite a few. I at least now I've been trying to, within the first 10 minutes of waking up, to go outside just to breathe. If there's sun there, get some sunlight. I try to go to bed around the same time every night, try to wake up around the same time. Saturdays, I try to disconnect, turn off all, not do emails, even turn off my phone for most of the day. Like I try to disconnect completely. I try to do some type of physical exercise every day for a half hour to an hour. Some of that time is when I'll, be reading a book or, emails that while on a bicycle, a stationary bike. So yeah, try to do something physical every day. Try to wake up around the same time. Try to get sunlight every day in the morning, right when I wake up. Drink a lot of water all throughout the day. I monitor quite a bit physically of, okay, time to stretch, time to do this. So very mindful there. Always try to end the day with learning something where I'm reading a book. I read a lot on investment banking and business model, very nerdy stuff. And maybe that helps me go to bed. I don't know, but I read quite a bit where if I'm not working, I'm trying to improve because I want to be in the top percentage of anything I do. And the investment banking is very competitive. And I want to have better answers and better questions than the guy sitting next to me that's going for the same deal. I want that guy that, he's interviewing different investment bankers to see who represents them to go like, Shawn really gets me. He understands my company versus that other guy. And you only get that through really asking those deep questions, understanding, basically a lot of always perpetually learning. And yeah, I think, and then there's other stuff, I have this little foam pillow for my neck. I have a pinched nerve in my neck where I'll just lay down. It was a jujitsu injury.
Oh, goodness.
And, I'll do that for 20 minutes at night when I've been at the computer for a long time. I don't know. I looking at things, there's a lot of things I do. There are little things, vitamins every day, stuff like that. But, habits are what make you.
That's awesome. And sloth or llama?
Sloth.
Of course. I knew that answer before I even asked it. And why? I just have to, really fast. You almost had a band that was called Sloth?
Yeah, in high school.
And how did that just form? Because you really like
sloths are the coolest animals ever. Any animal that if a tiger chases them still only moves 6 feet a minute, that's an animal that just doesn't care. That animal you have to respect. Let's be honest.
Absolutely.
Like 100%. Life is on the line. It's like 6 feet a minute. That's all I'm moving.
That is powerful. That is very powerful. And then finally, is there anything else last that you wanted to share or say? And then how can people find you?
Last minute takeaways, I would say, just start trying, just start doing something, and always feel okay to pivot. That's the one thing I've noticed more than anything. Sometimes I'll overanalyze the situation, look in, study too much, and then I go, gosh, I should have just started. And then when the problems face, then learn from them, pivot, try. And I felt that has helped my life more than anything. Okay, I'm just going to move to Costa Rica. Okay, I'm going to move to China and I'll figure it out once I get there. And then you face all these issues and problems, but you somehow survive and get through it and you keep moving forward. And those problems later, if you were to face them again, aren't problems anymore because you've already accomplished it. Like, I guess that's one of the takeaways I really had when I've done a lot of interviews is I've noticed that people will only succeed as high in life as the problems that they're able to kind of surpass. So if this problem, if you have problems with that and you can't go above it, that's your limit. That's your limiting factor right there in your career, your life, everything. But if that problem comes there and you're able to handle it, then you can handle every problem below that. And now a new problem comes. Well, if you can handle that one, it's a little bit higher. Now you can handle anything below that. And I've seen these people at the top where I'll go, oh my gosh, how did you face that? Your company had this problem. You're like, well, I just had to deal with it. And you're like, well, everyone else would have just caved in and cried in the corner, but you surpassed that. So that's how you were able to get so far up here, and everyone else has never crossed that barrier. So when you face a problem, just think of it as, okay, this is my test. How much further can I go past it in life? And then you'll see like, oh my gosh, all this stuff is so easy. So that I think would be the key takeaway from this is just, once, if you're not facing problems that are challenging to you, you're not growing. And then with that, if you want to contact me for the podcast, go to thesiliconvalleypodcast.com. My LinkedIn is Shawn Flynn, ShawnFlynn. Connect with me on LinkedIn. And then if anyone's looking for an investment banker, mergers, acquisitions, growth capital, contact me and we'll have a conversation. But more than anything, there's a lot of fun in this conversation. So thank you.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for your time. Everyone, please definitely check out the podcast, Silicon Valley Podcast, and all of the other places that Shawn has mentioned. As always, the light in me sees and honors the light in each and every one of you, including you, Shawn and Michelle. Thank you guys for your time. Bye-bye, everybody.